of residential care, domiciliary care to the VA, or long-term nursing care. Those are medical requirements. Those aren't David Worley's requirements.
And post-traumatic stress will be part of those requirements?
Mental health is part of the requirement. Acute mental health is not a reason to be at the Iowa Veterans Home. But that would have to be a part of the consideration. So if it's an acute issue, no.
And then you said you've discharged 3 or 4 folks under the involuntary. Can you explain not only the process of that discharge, involuntary discharge, but what has happened to those 7 veterans? Where are they on the street? Are they in hotels? Where are they at?
Well, I can talk about the last 4. One of them is in a long-term care facility. I can't be specific because of HIPAA violations. 2 of them were put into other facilities that aren't specific to veterans, but they gear towards serving veterans. And then one of them went home. In the report, I'm sure that's a public report. I sent it and submitted online with the new program, so you guys are aware of that. 2 of them were there because they were violent with other residents. One of them was refused to pay his bill, and one of them continued to violate our substance abuse policy, which, as you are aware of, before I got here, the legislators passed the change in the code that, and we don't, even though it's a 3 strikes you're out, I'll tell you, it's not free. We work with them, we treat them, we have substance abuse counselors there. We work with them as best we can, but if they continue to violate, then the other residents then get frustrated and say, why isn't Steve Smith getting treated? Why does he get to break the rules all the time? So we work very, very hard with our residents. We give them as many opportunities as we can, and we try our best to get them to change. But unfortunately, we have to make some changes and some opportunities and look at how we can best make sure we can serve not only that resident, but continue to serve the other 600 residents we have at the Iowa Veterans Home.
Thank you. Representative Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Commandant Worley, for coming today and for hearing the testimony today and also responding to these concerns. Just a few questions on things. First of all, relative to turnover at the Veterans Home, there have been some comments about that and employees leaving with fair regularity. Do you follow the turnover rates, and are they higher today or this past year than they have been in previous years at the Veterans Home?
Turnover in long-term care is very intensive. We are much lower than any other long-term care facility. We provide great benefits. Our salaries are a little higher. I haven't seen any drastic increase in turnover I haven't compared it to 20 years ago because I don't know if that would be a fair comparison. And so I haven't seen any drastic increase. We offer every employee that leaves an exit interview, and our human resources people handle that. If things come up in those exit interviews, then we discuss them and we try to figure out ways to change them. And we keep working hard to make sure our residents, it's always our goal to make sure, I actually have 2 requirements. I have to make sure that we provide the best quality care we can for our residents, and we provide a safe, healthy, and if we can, happy working environment for our staff. And that's what we do, work on every day.
You've heard allegations raised today about harassment, and I'm wondering if there have been grievances filed on harassment and if there have been any settlement of those having gone the full steps of grievances. If
there were being grievances against me, and I know you would have to ask the Department of Administrative Services that. I can't answer that question. I can only say that, if they were against me, then it would be, if it was one employee against another employee, we would do that investigation. If it was against the leader at the Veterans Home, we would do that investigation. But if it was against me, it would go through the Department of Administrative Services. I'm not trying to get out of answering that question. I'm just saying that's the way it would work.
So if it was against a supervisor or another member of management, you would not be briefed on that by...
No, if it was against another member of management, it would be at what level it was, and then it would come to me and we would handle it internally. We would always, if it's something that came to us, internally to us, then, but we would always seek that guidance from DAS on how to handle those things.
And have there been such cases?
I'm aware of some cases that against leaders that we have investigated.
Okay, all right.
Internal to us, not to me. I don't know.
Okay, all right. The next question I had was related to, you talked about that the Veterans Administration considers domiciliary care and residential care as one and the same. And, but the state or the federal government would not necessarily require, or would not require a Iowa license to be a residential care facility.
The federal government doesn't use the term residential care. We could be a domiciliary, a VA domiciliary without being a licensed residential care, absolutely.
Right. But the legislation that you proposed, or department legislation that I believe has been signed into law now by the governor, does call for residential care.
There was no change to our residential program at all in that legislation.
Okay,
No, sir.
Except that it used the term residential care versus domiciliary.
Because that's a 35D code. So it's a state code, so we tried to make the language consistent to state.
Right.
But as in the level of care, no, we're still a licensed residential care facility.
Okay, the last question I have for you, Conrad, thanks for being patient with me on these questions, but deals with, I was running a proposal the other day in the House to restore $500,000 to what you could carry forward in services, and the floor manager challenged that, saying that I think the procedure is that monies that are not used at the veterans home are then transferred over to the Medicaid program. Is that correct? That's a little bit of follow-up to my actual last question here.
No, sir. If there is no language about our carry forward, then we keep the carry forward.
Okay. But
If there is language, like for instance, last year's budget was language that we get to keep $500,000 of our carry forward, and everything went to DHS. But it has to say specifically where it would go. I'm not the DON when it leaves our facility expert, but
so the argument, counter argument to me asking for that $500,000 is that you turned back something like $3 million out of last year's budget.
well, we gave it back. Yes,
You gave it back. I mean, and it was used.
we didn't turn it back. We were told to give
we
it
were
back.
required by law to do that. So I get into issues like the amount of availability of recreational services and the newspaper that was discontinued at the Veterans Home. And so I'm wondering about the cutbacks in services like that.
The newspaper wasn't discontinued. The newspaper, we told the residents that ran the newspaper we would do the same thing we were doing for Insights, that we would print 50 copies, put it on our webpage, and which is the same thing we do for our monthly letter. So that wasn't discontinued. They chose that they didn't want to do that. And so, I mean, it's still my responsibility ultimately to make smart business decisions. And so they chose to go another path. That was their choice.
Okay, and so it was a reduction then, not a discontinuance from however many copies they were printing before down to 50.
Yes, because we were spending about between $700 and $900 a month for a newsletter. And I mean, I have to make smart decisions, and the reason why we were able to give back some money is because we are making smart decisions. And so the decision was to speak with them about making it the same way as we do Insights. So we made Insights. We were still going to keep it a monthly newsletter for them, even though we changed the Insights to a quarterly newsletter.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
We have one more senator that has a question. I have kind of a mutually exclusive goal to do today. I want to make sure everybody is heard, and I also had hoped to get out of here a few minutes ago. So I think Senator Horn, and then Kamala, you asked if you could make a
Less than 30 seconds, sir.
closing statement, and then we'll see if there are anybody else that has any wrap-up statements. Senator Horn.
Thank you. I've heard a lot of testimony today that things are bad, and I don't know this. When I hear testimony, I have to listen and tend to believe because I don't think they're lying. And you come up and you come before me and seem to give a different story. What we want to know, you know, from your story, I would read that let's drop this, there's not a problem. And from their story, we have a real problem here because it testified to that. Do you think it should be dropped now, or do you have plans to somehow have a corrections for what's going on wrong?
So anytime anybody comes to us with an issue or a challenge, we try to address it the best way. The best way I would know to answer that question is for you to come and spend some time. I know you're very busy, and of course you're not getting out of here as quick as you thought this year, but I really would love for you guys to come and spend some time with the Veterans Home. That way you're not listening to what anybody else says except the people that were impacted every day. And so that's the people that are there. I can sit here and tell you 95 great feeling stories, just like I'm sure somebody can sit here and tell you 95 stories contrary to that. What I would like is for you to come up there, see what we're doing every day. I don't believe that the morale is bad as some people. It may be for some of those people, but I still believe that the residents are getting great quality of care. I see motivated, happy residents. I spent 5 hours at the Veterans Home yesterday talking to families and talking. That's when the families are there on the weekend, so I go in there at least sometime every weekend. I'm not going to say every weekend, that wouldn't be accurate, but as much as I can to talk to families, to ask them what their challenges are. And so I was in there yesterday talking to some families, and they're very, very pleased. I'm not saying that we don't have some challenges. I would never suggest that. We do have challenges, and we're going to continue to work on them. When you say drop it, I don't know what that would mean, drop. So I would suggest that come and ask the questions, don't just necessarily ask them of me or just the people. Go around and talk to the veterans and talk to the residents and talk to the staff and spend some time up there so you're not getting the story from me or 5 other people. You're getting the story from a group of people who are up there living it every day.
Well, see, I kind of listen and I think, are you a dictator over there, or what are you doing? And I'm trying to get some feeling is, are you a listener also, or are you just dictating all of this from what the testimony is saying? And that's what I'm trying to calculate, try to understand where are we coming from. Because the most important thing is our veterans, not the testimony, not you, but is our veterans, and that's what we got to look out for. And we have to make some kind of a coalition to get together to correct if there is a problem.
Yes, sir, and I'll tell you, when an employee comes forward with a challenge or a problem or an issue, we're going to address it the best way we can. More importantly, when a resident has a challenge or an issue, we're going to address it. A lot of it has to do with communication, and I know Melanie Kampf, who I respect immensely, she came to us with some challenges. One of the challenges was that we had stopped having AA meetings, and we weren't allowing our residents to go to AA meetings. Well, if you get the local TR, that's what we call our paper, the AA meeting, we have at least 2 and sometimes 3 a week at the Iowa Veterans Home. And so sometimes it's just a matter of communication. It was suggested that I stop the wood shop from happening. The wood shop went out of operation, I think, 4 years ago, well before I got there. Now we haven't opened it back up because we don't really have a place to put it, but we're trying to figure out some ways to make those things happen. So I think a lot of it is just about communication. As for I listen and we try very hard, and sometimes as a leader, I do have to make some decisions that everybody's not going to be happy with.
Well, you know, what I'm trying to find out is, do we have a problem or not? It still seems like to me we have a problem and we need to work and try to correct it. That's where I would head at this point.
I would agree with you, sir. We obviously have some challenging issues that we're going to continue to work on. I agree with that 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Worley, you're invited to give your closing statement.
Well, I'd like to tell you, as I said at the beginning, that first of all, I'd like to thank all the employees, even the former employees who are here. I think they deserve what they can for what they've been doing at the Iowa Veterans Home. I don't know if that's proper to give them a big hand, but we got some employees in the back and what they're doing every day. I think we should thank them. If that's okay, we can give them a big hand for it. Even the 4 employees that worked there who came here and sat up here, they were all great employees and they did a wonderful thing. What I would ask is that if people have questions, please come to the Veterans Home and ask us and look into it yourself. This is a wonderful mission, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to work to make sure our veterans continue to get the best quality care they possibly can. So, thank you.
Thank you. As I indicated in our opening opening comments, today was a day of listening and questioning. By intent, we didn't plan to take any action today. I do believe that Senator Horn's question deserves an answer, and we will have a subsequent meeting that we do decide. I think there are a number of options that are available to us, Senator Horn. Doing nothing does not sound like probably a very good idea given the testimony that we heard today. Perhaps government oversight is an area that we might want to explore. But we will take action, not today, but we will take action later. And for the members of the Veterans Affairs Committee, I seek your input and just what direction that you would like to go from here. Senator Sodders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I not only have, is this my area, you know, I have, you know, the employees, the management, the veterans are all in my area, all constituents. What I heard today is very serious. And we didn't get into some of it. I don't think this is the place to get into some of the accusations that were here, but they're serious and they impact the veterans home, in my opinion. And I even met with folks this weekend in management who are afraid to come forward to say anything. And partly because of that thing I just read you here, even though there's a new one out that isn't quite so assertive. I don't believe anybody at the Veterans Home has been able to sign a new one. And I'm hoping that this committee asks, and I'm going to be asking for this to go to oversight. We have one oversight chair here. I've heard enough questions that I think this should go to oversight. No question, because they've got subpoena power. They've got some power to get some folks who, in my opinion, would come in and actually do some testifying if compelled. They don't want to do it because, again, you've heard the reprisals. I have additional things I'm investigating back in my area of talking to people, and as you guys know, I'm a cop, so part of my job is investigation, and I'm going to continue to do that. I've heard several times hostile work environment at the Veterans Home, including the allegations of mistreatment, sexual harassment, putting your hands on employees. One of the folks I talked to this weekend told me a similar story. And that's why I'm going to ask Governor Branstad also to put Commandant Worley on leave and his deputy director. And let's get a real investigation going, not with DAS, but the department, either the AG's office, Department of Criminal Investigations, on some of these allegations. You know, things I've heard today and what I've heard from employees and from folks over the last year, some veterans, I don't know if I could vote for reappointment for this commandant if it was held today. So those are my comments. I'm really concerned.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would caution everybody also that
The sole purpose of our committee, and I think the meeting today, is to honor, assist, and protect the men and women who do and have served their country. This committee is the voice and advocate for Iowa's veterans. And I think that has been the focus of this meeting, the quality of care, management decisions as relate to the quality of care. And I would encourage you to further explore this. Depending on the closing days of the legislature, I do want to ask this committee to come forward. I think a recommendation of some sort is in order, even if it's no recommendation. But I think there will probably be some action recommended. Will we take the action? No, we cannot depose and put under oath people to testify. That's why this was more of a fact-finding mission today, and time to ask questions and to get answers. There is another committee. Back to the chair of the oversight is here today. They can depose witnesses. They can issue subpoenas, and so they can do some things to get the. I think, as I said in my opening remarks, I think today will illuminate, and it certainly has. I think the next step will probably be making a recommendation later this week week. I will work in consultation with the ranking member, and we'll do this in a civil and nonpartisan way. I adjourn the meeting.